Thanks to Father Pipothoros for a very thought-provoking and challenging speech. Three things that I take from his presentation is the interface between religion, ethics, and science in the form of the sanctity of personhood, which is not much different than respect for human rights. The sanctity of person's free will, and how love thy neighbor as a Christian imperative or dictum could also mean respect your neighbor and respect the earth's resources that feeds you. And I'm very happy that all these three dicta direct us to the merits of sustainability. Now, as regards the interface between modern biotechnology and religion, which is a very difficult field, I will leave that to John Harris, Peter Lackman, and the other experts like Inez in the panel. And on that happy note, I'd like to open the floor to questions. Annabelle. It would be, yeah.
Oh, fine. I've got a question for Professor Lackman, and also may I a comment. The question was such an interesting talk. And right at the end, you said that the decline in population over the past generation really has been influenced by two things. One's the education of women, and the other was affluence. And you suggested, I think very provokingly, that efforts now to sort of rein in affluence a bit might turn out to be counterproductive. And I wanted to press you on that and to ask whether you meant we should rein it in, or whether the idea was a redistribution of opportunities for affluence to some extent was the critical factor. And I had a slight comment, because listening to you on religion, and especially the importance of its prohibitions, reminded me enormously of Durkheim and the elementary forms of the religious life. I know anthropologists are very puzzled. They don't really like it anymore. It's gone out of fashion because of the idea that Aboriginal tribes in Australia are going to tell us something about the elementary forms of religion. Now it seems like a mistaken idea. But in so many respects, your talk seemed incredibly Durkheimian. And as someone who feels that Durkheim actually got the short end of the stick, that people appreciate Weber far too much and Durkheim too little, I was hoping perhaps that you might want to draw on a wonderful example of Durkheim next time you present your ideas.
Thank you very much. Durkheim and Weber, I will leave to John Harris, actually. I think in present company I won't discuss philosophers. I'm sorry, I didn't say that the human population had gone down. I said the projections for future growth had decreased, and it is believed, this was based on the study that the Royal Society did with the Indian Academy, the first thing that the Inter-Academy panel ever did, that the education of women and an improvement in standards of life, that people in fact wish to do other things than simply to have increasingly large families, and also not to need increasing number of children just in order to be able to live. In other words, that they should have old age pensions, they should have farm machinery, all these things which actually make life more affluent. And I think that the idea that we should, which is not what John Sulston said, but which a number of other people say, that we should all actually go back to being sort of hunter-gatherers in a view that we can have more people using less resources, I think is A, completely unrealistic, and secondly also quite undesirable. And I think that this is one of the reasons that population is so important, is I really don't think there is much future in a world where we are trying to live an increasingly simple life in the form that people look back at past centuries as if it was a golden past, instead of a time when life was brutish and short and full of disease and unpleasantness. And I do actually want to make one other point, which is when people say, and somebody said this morning, that most of the problem about overconsumption is in the highly developed world, I think one also has to be slightly careful about that. The first consequence of persuading the United States to reduce their enormous energy inputs into agriculture would not be to make the United States farmers poor, it would be to create enormous starvation in large parts of the third world, which rely entirely on food imports from the United States and now from one or two other overproducing countries in order to be able to feed themselves. So I think one has to think of the consequences a bit too. But I take what you say about Durkheim. I'll have a supervision about this from John Harris in due course. Thank you.
I'm as nervous about these things as you are. Is that working? Oh, good. Thanks to all the speakers and panelists for a very interesting opening session. I think what was highlighted for me particularly by the two keynote talks is the vast gap between what we talk about at the level of individual behaviour, as John Harris was saying, our tendency to want to make ourselves better and to have better lives for ourselves, and group behaviour, where, as I think Inez highlighted, sometimes what is good for the group is not what is good for the individual. Perhaps we have to be greed dehanced. We have to lose some of our greed and our individual wanting to be better in order to make the world a better place, to make life better for a group. What I would like the panel to comment on is this idea that perhaps moral enhancement for individuals, making us better, might actually require us having to give some things up. And particularly I want to ask the question whether you think that either now or in the past, religion has ever been a moral enhancement that can do that for us. Well, a general question to the panel.
Thank you for this, which gives me the opportunity to share some other thoughts that we had this morning with some of you. I can talk only for the Orthodox Church and theology, of course. For us, ethical codes are general and can never be scholastic. What I mean with that, I can talk with examples which are easier to share. For example, the use of condoms. For the Orthodox Church, this has never been an issue, the use or not of condoms, because we think that this question is a scholastic question and has no place for an Orthodox theologian or for a patriarch to issue an encyclical or to issue a book with ethical codes which can contain these kind of details for the faithful to follow or not. The use of condoms is led to the common sense and free understanding of each faithful who has the common sense and can use it when it is needed to be used. I can give you another example with the protection of the environment. For the first time, the Orthodox Church, through the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, announced very openly with an encyclical that the pollution of the environment, for example, is considered a sin. And this is official, and this is something new. And this is a new way of understanding the role of the religion and the churches particularly to the new challenges that humanity faces today.
Are these voice activated? Wonderful. Technology strikes again. I'm not sure that I ought to be drawn on whether abandoning religion would or would not be a moral advance, but I was struck in the bishop's presentation by how personally biographical it was, that it was full of this is what we believe and this is what Orthodox Christians believe. And it struck me that this at best could only have appeal to people who shared those beliefs. And it seems to me that if we are to try to achieve consensus, particularly in democracies, it is important that arguments be couched in terms that ought to be persuasive to a rational mind. That is to say, that ought to be of general appeal, rather than appeal only to particular groups of individuals who already accept a particular doctrine or a particular way of life, or indeed a particular set of folk habits or whatever it happens to be. So my own feeling is that I feel slightly unnerved where effectively we have a presentation which is a very interesting piece of personal biography, facts about the particular speaker, but not really designed to be of appeal to anyone who doesn't already share that set of beliefs.
Would you like to answer? Would you like to reply to that? Or? I mean, discussing
just a short comment. You're right. Of course, it was like this because I cannot speak for others, and my task was to present to you the Orthodox aspect of personhood as seen by the Orthodox Church, which of course is not accepted by all, and this is respected as well. You're right. Thank you.
Professor Maniatis, who I have to say would have been with us as a speaker today if we hadn't been given the wrong email address, and we feel honored to have him among us in the audience, and definitely as a keynote speaker in another function. Professor Maniatis.
Thank you for the comment. I have a comment first for Professor Harris concerning enhancement. Of course, human civilization is from the beginning an effort to enhance human skills and abilities. But we should not confuse the various forms of enhancement. I would like to concentrate on enhancement by medical means. Until recently, medicine cannot do many things. It was not very interventional, had limited possibilities. But now, the possibilities have increased and increased all the time. But still, medical ethics have not confronted the problem of enhancement explicitly. The way we do enhancement today by medical means is by covering it as treatment. For example, cosmetic surgery, as it was known until a few years ago, it's now called reconstructive surgery. Also, the use of growth hormone to increase the height of people falling within normal limits is covered now by having redefined the minimum normal height. So justifying giving growth hormone not for enhancement, but for treatment. And we do that in many other examples. The question is, should we accept enhancement by medical means as an accepted practice? There are many questions about doing that. But it's true that we already do that. From the ethical point, we have to realize that enhancement, the way it's done, it's always giving a comparative advantage to some people, based mainly on cultural values. For example, tall people are preferred over short people. And I can envision conditions in which short people will be advantageous relative to tall people. Anyway, these are my comments about enhancement. And to close this comment, I would be a little bit hesitant to call these medical interventions are